Hi everyone, so the Season 5 PTR is around the corner. I have spent a great deal of time looking at the patch notes, discussing, making planners ahead of time already, to then try to jump in and be as efficient as possible and test everything we can in this 1 week. So this Tuesday it's going live, and there is some pretty cool, interesting stuff for the Barbs. In general, Barbs are looking really powerful. They have been dominant in the game for several seasons now, most seasons actually. And it seems like they will continue to do so. Why? Well, because they didn't really get any significant nerfs, at least not from what we can tell from the patch notes, and they will just remain at the top doing ridiculous amounts of damage thanks to bleeds. Now, that being said, there's a bit of a chance for some shadow nerfs. There's also a chance that Blizzard may have just overlooked the ridiculous power of the Gushing Wounds key passive, which is mainly responsible for the insane damage output that most Barbs builds are doing these days. And I would not be surprised to see that change in the final patch notes, because yeah, that might have been an oversight. That being said though, there is some new items that come to the Barbs, 2 new unique items actually, that do open up some cool possibilities and that bring us back to the good old times of the Kratos Barb. This is what you see here in action. I've actually leveled one from 1 to 100 in Season 4, just to have fun with that good old school build again. The Death Blow, Upheaval, Iron Maelstrom combo, that was just like such a fun build to play. And what I'm about to show you will have elements of this build in 2 separate setups actually. So this is kind of like how that build worked in the past. This is something I've made back in Season 0 actually, pre-Season 1. That was the only non-rogue build I've actually made. This was the Silent Barb back then, or the Kratos Barb, that a lot of people loved. And it's coming back thanks to a new item here. So this is the Unbroken Chain that Blizzard is introducing. Now, to talk a little bit about this item, this is a very cool item, very fun design, I think, that is incentivizing you to use Iron Maelstrom. Now, the thing is that a lot of people might be expecting this to be very good, and you know, you use the ultimate, you hit the entire screen, it feels awesome. Well, you have to know that damage-based ultimates that are not supporting you in any way are usually not really a thing these days. Even Rain of Arrows, that probably has by far the most support out there for any ultimate to deal any kind of damage, has not really been used for rogues, and rogues were already not the top class, for example. Now Rain of Arrows is getting buffed and it might become a thing, but a general lack of scalability plagues every single ultimate in this game, and usually you only use an ultimate if it buffs you in a significant way. You can see this, for example, on the Barbs. We have Wrath the Berserker that buffs you, that has been used for the longest time. It is still used in some builds, I guess. Same with the Call of the Ancients. You don't actually care what these guys do. You only use them for this effect and not really for anything else. So it's kind of like the same theme in every single ultimate. You usually want to use it as, you know, debuff, as a buff for your character, but not to deal damage, because it lacks skill ranks. You can't really scale them. It lacks, you know, other effects like ultimate damage. Now there is a lot of it here, for example, but when we're talking about barbarians, we're looking at builds that usually have 1500% plus, like, you know, edited damage already in their setups. So even a juicy chunk like this here that can be masterwork to like 500, 600 or so, is still not really gonna shift the balance in the favor of Iron Maelstrom. So if you're expecting to do like 1 billion damage with Iron Maelstrom, probably not. Now, that being said, there is a way that this could do a lot of damage, which is to abuse the same bleed shenanigans that a lot of Barb builds do these days. Again, under the circumstance of no Gushing Wounds nerf, which is kind of like the you know, all-defining key passive here these days, then there would be some ways to scale this relatively high and actually have some pretty serious damage output. Now, I was assuming for my setups, we're going to play some kind of old school Kratos Barb, for example, for this setup here. So this is, you know, Upheaval, Iron Maelstrom, Walking Arsenal, which is a kind of like overlooked key passive these days. It's not very powerful. And at least against Gushing Wounds, it doesn't hold a candle. Again, if there is no Gushing Wounds build nerf coming, then I will probably rework this to actually be a bleed build instead of, you know, typical DPS, like a crit build or something like that. And the same also goes for Death Blow. There's also something that is kind of interesting here. This is another new unique item, the Third Blade, a new sword that allows you to spam your weapon mastery skills by making them into core skills that cost resources. And that actually opens up something really cool. So now you can actually play a core skill Death Blow build, for example. You can also do the same with Rupture or with Steel Grasp, but I mean, Steel Grasp is not exactly a damage skill, so there's not a huge advantage here to combining this. Technically, you could actually combine both of these uniques together into one build, because there is some synergy here between Steel Grasp and the Iron Maelstrom, giving you this cooldown reduction effect, for example. Realistically, if you're looking at Iron Maelstrom build, it will not be strong enough for the pit, I think, even under the circumstances that you go the bleed route, but maybe it will do kind of something, I guess. And at the very least, it's going to feel really cool. Personally, I really love this build. It's like one of my favorite builds in the game, the Kratos Barb, and this is kind of getting lifted up by this. And at the very minimum, I will make a Kratos Barb and level it up and use this as my Helltide character. Every time there's like a good Helltide popping up and some good whispers there, I will go there with this build because it's gonna be so fun. Just press Iron Maelstrom, wreck the entire screen, do like 2 Steel Grasps and do it all over again. It's gonna be amazing. So this is at the very minimum a cool build for that. And we'll see if there's going to be any kind of real scalability later on. Now, that being said though, about the third blade, you can combine those and spam even more Steel Grass to get the cooldowns back. Realistically, I don't think this will be needed because Steel Grass has a short enough cooldown anyway if you invest into it. So this is mostly opening up a Death Blow build, like a Hoda build basically, or like an Upheaval build. It's going to like spam Death Blow. So this is kind of like the setup that I try to come up with here. And it's kind of reminiscent of the good old Whirlwind Hoda build from Season 2 Path of Exile. So this is kind of like what I was working on here. So this is an Unbridled Rage, good old Ring of Red Fury and Banishor's Talisman combo for the guaranteed crit on every single Death Blow, and then the guaranteed overpower on top of that for most likely every second Death Blow, maybe every third. It depends a bit on like how many resources it will actually cost. But with Unbridled Rage, we can make this Death Blow potentially cost quite a lot of resources. We don't have any info on how much that will be since we don't have the BDR yet. But let's say that the base cost is going to be something like 40 or so, or maybe 30. That will be kind of similar to, for example, the Hammer of the Ancients cost here. And then you can kind of like Whirlwind, Death Blow, Whirlwind, Death Blow, Whirlwind, Death Blow. And every time you do that combo, you will get a guaranteed crit from the Ring of Red Fury by spending at least 100 Fury. And then you will get this 275 resources spent for the guaranteed overpower. And then you can do some really big bonks. I also expect you're going to see some nice buffs to those uniques here, because Blizzard has said that they're reviewing every single unique in the game, and they want to, like, really double down on what they do, what makes them special, and generally lift them up to the level of legendaries with tempers, with increasing their top end outcome a little bit. So I expect us to actually get better than what we can see here right now, based on those potential unique buffs that will be coming. And yeah, this can just be a really fun kind of old school build that actually does some really serious overpower damage. Death Blow in the current live patch in Season 4 can already scale to probably like 1 billion or so plus bonks, basically. And well, I guess it kind of depends a little bit on what will happen with Gushing Wounds yet again. If there's no nerf to it, I guess you're gonna, again, go the same route as all the other bleed builds on the Barb and just make this a Gushing Wounds build, and I'm gonna do another planner and make this work with bleeds instead. But for now, I want to do some big bonks with this, and this is kind of what we have been working on here. There's a couple of interesting things in the setup as well, which is, for example, the Encroaching Wrath aspect, which makes it so that after spending 100 Fury, you actually get a lot of extra damage for your next Weapon Mastery skill. And well, that is a really good synergy with all this other stuff that we're already doing, since the intention is that we are spending a lot of Fury really quickly. You always have this buff for every single one of your Death Blows. And there's another cool thing here, which is that you deal a lot of extra damage against bosses. And bosses is usually the big downside and the big problem that you have to deal with basically in every single build these days, thanks to the pit. Also thanks to, for example, the new Infernal Hordes. So you kind of solve that problem by default by just having a huge extra burst on bosses. And you can still have like a bit of AoE here from the Overkill. I also expect a pretty heavy buff to this item, for example, that can give you a bit of like AoE clear, like a mini upheaval basically, that allows you to not just bonk one target, but actually, extend your range and deal with packs much more easily. So it sounds like a really cool, nice combo. I guess technically it can also get to the point where You don't have to do this whirlwind stuff necessarily, but it does open up a lot of extra synergies that work well with this here. So number one, you can get your more fury spent because you whirlwind in between your death blows, so you more easily trigger all the stuff like Red Fury. You more easily trigger stuff to banish the Talisman. And you also get weapon swaps, and weapon swaps are kind of like one of the main engines of this entire build. We have the Weapon Master here that is actually getting buffed to 8% maximum fury per weapon swap. And every time you do the whirlwind, for example, you do dual whirlwind, and then you bonk with your hammer, for example, you get 16% of your fury. And well, this setup right now has 146 fury, for example. That would be something like, yeah, 20-ish, a bit more than 20 fury just from that, before any bonuses like, you know, resource generation that you have actually on the ring. And for example, the Shaco, you're gonna have a Shaco here probably. And well, there's also other stuff. For example, you have the Grasping Whirlwind right now, so you can pull in enemies as well, which is very helpful for the death blow to make sure that you actually, you know, get enemies in your radius and you can just bonk them, or whatever is not in your radius, you can get them with the shockwave. So there's a lot of really cool combos you can do thanks to the weapon swapping from Whirlwind and Death Blow. So I'm very excited to try out this setup here, and I think I've done like a pretty well-rounded setup here. This is like a 7-board build. Seems kind of unusual for my typical Barb setups, but yeah, this kind of works out pretty well. We just pick up some of these legendary nodes here. There's about another few kind of good legendary nodes all around. For example, Bone Breaker here, giving you a guaranteed overpower every 12 seconds, which cannot be consumed by Whirlwind. So Whirlwind cannot overpower. So that is really useful here, just to sometimes give you the overpower when the Banish Talisman doesn't, for example. So there's a few other little things in there like that. Now there will be a bit of fine-tuning that we have to do here when the patch goes live, or when the PTR goes live and I actually get to try this, because I'm not 100% sure how the resources will feel. For example, I put in a Starlight Loop here as well. This is getting buffed to now work with overhealing, so you can spend a lot of resources, and for example with Invigorating Fury and a bunch of extra willpower giving you, for example, extra healing received, you can get a lot of healing really fast and proc this over and over. So this might kind of just solve your resources by itself. But just to be safe, I also put in Tibor's Will, for example, and the Metamorphosis. This might be overkill, we'll see. We also have the Shouts, for example. We might not really need the Rallying Cry. So there is a bit of like tuning I will do here, and we'll see what exactly we'll need. But for now, that's kind of like a working setup. And for example, if you don't need the Rallying Cry, we could fit in like a Leap, so you have a bit more mobility, for example, or you could also fit in an Iron Skin, which is really nice for like pit pushing, for example. It's like a really powerful defensive tool. So there's a few things like that that we could work with here. But overall, I think we have a good baseline. So this is what I have been working on the Barb here. So I have both these planners linked down in the description, the Kratos Barb for Season 5, and then the Death Blow Barb with Whirlwind. So at least this is what I'll be trying to make work here. Again, little caveat, we don't know if something will change here or not. Maybe we're gonna rework this to something a little bit different and make use of this stuff, but I think it will also be cool to just play a non-bleed build for once, considering like how prevalent that was in Season 4. So I'm kind of excited to do some really big bonks here with constant like big overpower crits, encroaching wrath, like everything kind of going off here. So that sounds really fun to do. So I'm excited for that. And of course the Kratos Barb, good old Iron Maelstrom spam. I'm also really excited for that. So this is what you'll be seeing from me, at least on the PTR. There might be some other stuff that you'll find, maybe some cool new synergies that open up or whatever. So we'll see. I'm going to keep you guys covered. For now, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about those setups here. And if you have maybe come up with some other cool synergies or some other cool builds or something new for Season 5, I'll be quite curious about that. Otherwise, we'll see what happens on the PTR. So hope you enjoyed this video and see you guys next time.